G'day, and welcome to the Best of the Rest F1 podcast with Sticks and Fraser. Tune in weekly to hear everything Formula One. G'day, and welcome back to the Best of the Rest podcast with Sticks and Fraser. I'm Fraser.
I'm Sticks.
How are you, mate?
I am fantastic now that terrible race is over and done with.
Oh, mate. Worst race of the season.
Look, the whole spectacle is interesting, but the actual racing on the track itself come Sunday is just not it, mate.
No.
I guess we should clarify that we're talking about the Monaco Grand Prix.
Oh, yeah, I think I forgot to say that, but
yeah,
surely anyone listening would know.
Read the title.
Yeah. Oh, well, that too, but when we're talking about the worst race of the season being over, can't really be anything else but Monaco, can it?
Well, they tried. They tried to do something different. The two stops.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any saving the race in terms of on-track entertainment.
I don't know if there's any rules or regulations or stuff that they can change that's going to make this race interesting. Like, what else can you do? Teams just going to create gaps wherever they can to squeeze in pit stops or manage or whatever. So,
unless you go into full-on la fantasy land and start throwing out some real wacky stuff, like, you're just not going to be able to create a race out of it. It's one on Saturday, and that's whether you finish first or second, and then maybe you might have a chance from second to dive at the first corner, and then it's sort of you're just waiting on something rogue to happen, a red flag or a safety car or something that might benefit or harm some other people's races. Like, that's about all you've got.
There is zero racecraft to this circuit. Absolutely zero. Because it's just you back up the rest of the field or whoever's behind you and create a pit stop gap for your teammate or whatever. Or you all drive around faster like they did at the front. Like, yep, that was great. It created a bit more speed at the front. It wasn't just Charles Leclerc backing up the entire grid. But, yes, just there's no opportunity for overtake. Like, pretty well, zero.
I think the only opportunity for overtake is something so bold and rogue that it probably takes both drivers out.
Yeah, exactly. Like, any cars that were trying that, like, Gasly was trying to put a bit of pressure on Tsunoda, runs up the fucking arse of him.
It's, I don't know, it's a difficult one because I think it's a race that you sort of love but also hate. Like, the race itself, I guess it's something different in terms of different look than a lot of the other races. You know, it's so tight and technical that anything can happen at any time, so it is sort of hard to look away, but at the same time, more often than not, nothing happens, and then you just sort of left like, right.
Yeah, a few times I was like, not on the edge of my seat, but I was kind of watching like something could eventuate, and then it just doesn't.
Just petered out, and that was
just stays the same. You get RBs, Williams, fucking all kinds of teams just creating gaps, and it was great having James Vowles on the pit wall actually with this race because he was giving a good insight from a team that was in that mid-pack that was also getting involved in the games of slowing down and creating pit stop gaps, and he essentially said he hated it and pretty well apologised to everyone, but not the way he wants to go racing, but they're almost forced to do it.
It's, I guess you've got to play the game with the rules that are in front of you, and that's sort of what teams did on the weekend to maximise points. And I don't think anyone was really proud of the way it panned out. It wasn't exactly like that's the way we like to race. And Sainz himself and Albon both sort of said that, you know, we go out there to race and be quick, not to just hold the pack up and race like this. But you got to do what you got to do to get the points on the given day. I mean, I guess we should mention who actually won this race, and it was Lando Norris from pole.
Yeah, Lando Norris converted his pole, which was an unreal lap, set the fastest lap ever, like track record.
I saw a stat that first, second, and third in qualifying was the 3 fastest laps ever at Monaco.
Yeah, right. So full all top 3
Was from that
was
qualifying
fastest
session.
lap.
So yeah, had Norris first, Leclerc second, and Piastri third. The same order that they started in, and yeah, there was no big movers or shakers. Mercedes just looked horrible. They went with the old strategy of let's hang it out for as long as possible and hope we get a few cheap pit stops or a red flag pit stop, but just nothing happened, and then they were lapped down, and then they were, best part of good lap and a half. They still hadn't pitted. They were held up in the train that was creating space for the teammates in front, and old George Russell cracked the shits with it in the end.
Yeah. I don't blame him. I also saw a photo because he put a tweet or something out that he said dinner's on you, Alex Albon, and then they actually did go out for dinner, and it was a photo with Albon holding up the bill. So I thought that was quite entertaining.
So for those that, I guess we should actually say what we were talking about there, that George Russell went straight on at the chicane at the end of the tunnel section and just blatantly blew past Alex Albon and then said more or less, give me the penalty, I'm sick of this shit. And yeah, they copped him, through the drive-through at him. So.
Yeah. And even with the drive-through penalty that essentially didn't change his position, but by the time he did his couple of pit stops at the end, Albon got back ahead again. But yeah, just the Mercedes being stuck behind the Williams. Toto was quite unimpressed, we'll say.
Did you know, or did you notice that Martin Brundle in the commentary, when he was mentioning that if you don't pit come the end of the race, that you just get 30 seconds added onto your time?
Yeah, he did. And then I think he may have corrected that after a bit. So he was saying that for a while, and I was thinking, geez.
That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, it's a wonder people aren't just going to, try and push on and take the penalty. But I think he corrected himself in the end to say that something to do with a red flag. If there's a red flag, if you finish under a red flag or something like that you haven't completed your compulsory pit stops, then you get a 30-second penalty. But if you chose not to do your pit stops, then you'd just be disqualified.
Yeah, if you finish under green flag conditions and you don't do all your pit stops, and it's a disqualification. Because I was thinking realistically, why would Max Verstappen, if that was the case, why would Max Verstappen not just stay out, finish the race, cop the 30 seconds? Because it's more or less 30 seconds to pit anyway, and he was so far ahead of the position that he was going to come out in front of if you were to pit that there was no threat of him losing a position.
No.
But I'm glad that wasn't the way it panned out, because otherwise you would have had Verstappen finishing, like coming across the line first to then finish fourth.
Yeah. Right, just to touch on quali real quick. Our Q1 exits 20th to 16th was Colapinto, Stroll, Gasly, Behrman, Bortoletto. What do you make of that, Sticks? Anything unusual, or is that about expected for those bottom 5?
Stroll doing Stroll things, mate. It's about all it boils down to. There wasn't too much to see in come Q1. Stroll had a stinker of a weekend. Old
Lancey boy up to that point had already caused a couple of collisions from impeding. And then can only put a 19th.
It's starting to get to the point where, like, the points tally for this season for the Aston Martin team is skewed because Stroll has scored all the points, but he has yet to out-qualify Alonso this year.
Yeah.
And he's got lucky when he scored the points. Like, yeah, they've pulled off some risky strategy and it's scored them some points, but on pure pace alone, Stroll's just sort of... I know we've always, well, probably more so me, but taken the piss out of him. But it's getting to the point where his pace is actually sort of diminishing and he's not even really much of a threat on pure outright talent and pace.
No.
So what do they do long term? If Adrian Newey does dish up a car that's competitive next year, do you want to waste that second seat with the driver that isn't going to maximise? It's a whole conversation itself, but it's getting concerning.
I'm sorry to be so blunt, but he's got to go. He really has to go. Like, Lawrence Stroll, mate, like, take a hard bloody look at yourself and your son. Like, what are you doing? It's a wonder your sponsors are sticking around. Like, it's starting to get an embarrassment.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how the second part of the season goes. If he has an absolute stinker, whether they move him on to the World Endurance Championship or some other format, because, they really need to maximise that second seat, and he's just not doing it. He's not up to the level. And I even get a bit of a vibe that the other Formula One drivers just don't respect him. You could almost feel as if they probably have a little bit of a laugh at him behind closed doors, especially when, caused old Leclerc to run up the back of him out of his own stupidity.
Yeah, that was terrible. Like, what was he doing? He just moved directly in front of Leclerc on the racing line. Like, I know he said, he didn't see him, but it's Monaco, mate. You need, in practices and qualies and all that, you need to be literally driving in your mirrors. You're probably going to spend more time looking backwards and forwards. Like, seriously.
All right, let's get back to quali because we could go on about that forever.
Yep. So Q2 exits, we had 15th to 11th. Antonelli, Russell, Hulkenberg, Tsunoda, and Sainz. Couple of interesting ones there, Sticks. The two Mercedes not only knocked out in Q2, but the lowest two, 14th and 15th.
Yeah, young Antonelli had a little bit of an incident at the chicane, which put him out in Q1, but he'd qualified for Q2. But
couldn't get the car back in time to get her out.
Mercedes having another issue similar to the previous race weekend at Imola. It seems weird that they seem to hit a curb or a hard bump and then they lose all electrical power, and that seems to be it.
Yeah, very unusual there.
You'd want to get that sorted, because if that becomes a common thing, it's going to cost them. Well, realistically, it cost them this weekend. For the most part, you'd probably bank Russell in for at least a top 6 quali spot and then points, but it led to the weekend that they had.
It's been interesting to see, actually, especially the last few weekends, that there has been a few car failures. The Ferrari power units typically up to this point, and now the Mercedes are having a bit of a run for it. So it's I kind of like it. Like, it's unfortunate you don't want to see people go out like that, but that's kind of like, that is racing, and that makes things a bit interesting, that cars aren't just on cruise control.
It adds that level of unpredictability, but also sort of touches a little bit more on almost the grass level routes. Like, the lower levels of racing, teams don't have a budget to have the engine in tip-top shape every single race weekend. So they do get failures, they do get loss of power, they do get things going on. And so if you add that little bit of uncertainty into Formula One, it does spice it up a little bit. You don't want to see it every single race weekend, but if teams are forced to run engines that aren't at the absolute peak because of the limit for the year, then you do get a little bit of action, so to speak, throughout the races.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if it's a little bit that maybe some of the teams have started putting a little bit of focus to next year, and they've missed something here and there on the current car, but time will tell, I guess.
Top 10, mate.
Q3, top 10. 10th to 1st, we had Albon, Lawson, Ocon, Alonso, Hadjar, Verstappen, Hamilton. And the top 3, Piastri, Leclerc, Norris.
The big takeaway for me there from the top 10, apart from, say, the top 4, 5 cars, was I reckon old Alex Albon wouldn't have been stoked with that lap to put him 10th. His Q2 time was about half a second quicker, which would have put him probably 6th, I think, around there. So that was a little bit of a disappointment for him, and a few of those other midfield teams sort of up there battling. But it was a spicy last lap there for the top 3 there, Freezer.
Yeah, definitely. Like we touched on earlier, the stat that you gave us, that top 3 in the last session of quali were all quick enough for the track record. Albon couldn't get it together for the last session, but I think they were saying previous that his Q2 time, because he was second, I think, or third in the standings for that session, would have been quick enough to put him sixth on the grid if he could have replicated that in Q3. The only other thing I'll point out that Hamilton qualied in fourth, but had a 3-place grid penalty, so he actually didn't start the race. He started that in seventh, so had Verstappen, Hadjar, and Alonso ahead of him there.
Bloody Hadjar is in a nice patch of form at the moment, both quali and race day. Being out of the Red Bull team and the sister team, being the solid second performer behind Max.
Yeah, he's doing real well, the young fella. Tsunoda's going to have to be a bit careful that, we've seen the ruthless Red Bull before many a times. Obviously there's not the rumours or anything kicking about at the moment, but it doesn't take much for them to get a little bit of sniff of blood in the water and sharks come out to feed.
So yeah, quali was hectic. Seeing Piastri go to the top and then Leclerc to take it away from him, and then Lando Norris to end up on pole in the first driver to crack the 1 minute 9s around Monaco is wild. That was definitely the peak of the weekend. It was always a hectic qualifying session at Monaco. Drivers to the absolute limit and, pretty much right on the walls. It's wild to watch. I did see Liam Lawson comment about how he found it was how much time there was to gain by pushing those extra few centimetres out to the wall. He said that, you do, like what you'd feel like is quite a safe but fast lap, and realising how much time is still out there is unbelievable when you push that little bit harder to the walls, and you really start to find the time. And that's the beauty of Monaco, is you're right on the edge. You can go from 0 to 0 real quick. And I guess that's why they keep coming back, why we keep watching. And, along with the big spectacle that is Monaco, the bay full of all the boats, expensive boats, super all the rich people coming out. Like it's a big event.
Yeah, and that's the kind of headache that Monaco provides, is that, I could comfortably say it's hands down the best qualifying of the year, but also hands down the worst race of the year. So, you got to kind of look at it from both perspectives, that it's so entertaining with the tight streets, close walls and barriers, that watching the cars fly around there, and especially weekend just gone setting new lap records, is just unreal. But then the race itself, I literally fell asleep. Luckily I was rewatching it on KO. So I just had to wake up and rewind a few minutes, but it was literally that boring. It's insane.
The excitement for the race definitely dies off very quick, doesn't it, mate? Like if you watch a little bit of the pre-race build-up, you start to get a little bit excited for it, and then the hype is at its peak when those lights start to build up, and then it goes out, and then once they all make it through that first corner, you're like, okay, well, are we going to see any overtaking? And there was a cheeky overtake in the first lap. Bortoletto up the inside of Antonelli, but then Antonelli threw it back down the inside because Bortoletto left the door open and caused a bit of a first lap incident. And it seemed like the stewards did not want to be throwing a red flag or a safety car out there and giving the teams a cheap pit stop.
Yeah.
And undoing all their hard work.
Yeah. Antonelli essentially shoulder charged bloody Bortoletto into the wall there. I was intrigued as well that maybe I was hung on hope that maybe we were going to get somewhat of an exciting race with the pit stops that they'd thrown in there, but we had on lap, or the end of lap 1, we had Tsunoda, Gasly, Behrman and Bortoletto all pit. So 4 cars that took one of their pit stops immediately. So I was watching and I was intrigued, thinking, oh, look out, we could be on for something here. One of those alternate strategies that Sticks was almost kind of predicting that could bring some high point scores, but they just seemed to get stuck behind a train and not improve from there the entire race. Everyone else just in the midfield pack managed, not even only tyres, they just managed the gaps and the race pace to create a pit stop gap for their teammate. You saw it a lot with, I think Tsunoda might have created one for Verstappen, even though they were a bit apart. But the main culprits were the RBs. They were only a position apart, and they were creating pit stop gaps to both pit in and then switch around, and then the other car would take their 2 pit stops. The same happened with Williams. Mercedes they essentially did a similar thing, but they were just kind of stuck behind the Williams, tried to hang it out as long as they could to, once they kind of got past that half, 3/4 race distance, they were essentially stuck. So I think they just kind of tried to hang it out and just literally hope for a late safety car or even a red flag that would kind of play into their hands and bring a miracle on board. But even with where they were sitting in the grid at the time, I think they were around 14th or something, that it might have even been lower, to be honest, that it was almost impossible.
I think realistically the drivers are trying to finish the race as quickly as possible so they can get all their obligations done and go and watch the Indy 500.
Yeah.
Get some real action.
Probably a bit of a factor. Yeah, a bit more entertainment, that one.
All right, I've got no more to add for the Monaco Grand Prix, mate. Unless you've got anything, we should probably jump over to our predictions.
No, I think that's about all we can really mention there.
Not too much else to add for the old Grand Prix itself. Right, so another weekend and another absolute basket case of predictions. The podium, I had Leclerc third, Verstappen second, and Piastri first. None of those come good. What about you, mate, for the podium?
So I had Verstappen for pole, Verstappen for win, Norris for second, Piastri for third.
1 point there on Piastri.
I did manage to snag the Piastri point, but the rest of the order was not quite there.
My hopeful left of field, being a bold strategy call to bring a midfield team's good points, did not come to fruition. I was hopeful that we might actually breathe some life into this race, but no, that was a bow.
Yeah,
no good.
Like I kind of mentioned with that early pit stop, I was sitting up thinking, oh, maybe Sticks has fucking cooked one up here, but no, she wasn't to be.
Nah, rare.
My left of field was 3 red flags overall for the weekend, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't put a little sneaky at least in there or more than, because I think there was 5 in total. So definitely. I think I was
no good
over that one by the end of P3 even.
Right, so our DNF risk or segment with working name.
Yeah, so I think we might have called it like below expectation, but we're thinking that we're going to go with drop the ball.
Yeah.
So who do you predict that might have dropped the ball for Monaco?
I had Gasly, mate, and yeah, he probably did drop the ball when he slammed up the back of old Yuki during the Grand Prix.
Are you playing footsies with me there?
Yeah, mate.
That was a bit cute. Yep, I'll definitely give you that one. Yeah, he dropped the ball massively there. I had Leclerc, and I think he's done the complete opposite, but then dropped the ball. Fantastic weekend for the young fella, and although it was disappointing for him, not to get a pole and a victory, it was good seeing the McLaren sandwiching either side of him.
Could be a running theme here. Maybe your drop the ball prediction may be actually a bit of encouragement for the driver to prove you wrong.
Well, it could be, because I've been putting him bloody for poles and victories, and he's been nowhere there. And then as soon as I put him to drop the ball, he's bloody up there almost winning it.
Right, so that brings us to a tally then. So just still a standoff, 1-1 for this week. Brings us to a grand total of, I think I'm on 9 and you're on 13.
It is, yes. 9 to Sticks and 13 to myself, a.k.a. Freezer.
Can't believe how shit our predictions are. But anyway.
Yeah, she's been a
rough
slow start. So, don't know what's going to happen with the old predictions. Are we going to continue at this kind of a pace of 1 or 2 a weekend, or we're going to get off to a bit of a flyer here shortly?
Well, tune into the next pod and we'll discuss what we think is going to happen in Spain, and hopefully we are a little bit more accurate than what we have been in recent times. And on that note, box.
All right, time to retire today's episode. Hit like, follow, subscribe. Share us with another F1 fan. We'll catch you on the next one. See ya. Bye.
Oh, look at this. This is not a dog. This is a piece of shit.
Wow.